Hi everyone, it's Chris Green, the History Chap, and I hope you're very well. And I just want to share with you a few events that happened in British history this week, the week commencing the 12th of July. So first and foremost, 13th of July, 1807, Henry Benedict Stuart died. Who on earth was Henry Benedict Stuart? Probably haven't heard of him. Well, he was the younger brother of Bonnie Prince Charlie, who you probably have heard of, and therefore also the son of James Stuart, the Old Pretender. And he was the last scion of the ousted Stuart dynasty, who had been ousted by the Hanoverians, the Georgians. He actually became a priest in the 1740s. He rose to the rank of cardinal and became Cardinal Bishop of Frascati in Italy. But he became the Stuart claimant upon the death of Bonnie Prince Charlie in the 1780s, about 40 years after he'd been defeated at the Battle of Culloden. And whilst he styled himself Henry IX, Henry Benedict Stuart never attempted to really press his claim to the throne, which is good, as you're going to find out in a moment. Just after he became the scion of the Stuart dynasty, there was the French Revolution, and they lost a lot of their wealth that was in France, was taken by the revolutionaries. And then, just for good measure, the French revolutionary armies then invaded Rome. So he lost what he had, a little bit he had left also went. And it was at this point that his distant cousin, the Hanoverian king, George III of Britain, stepped in and gave him a pension for the rest of his life. Just as well he hadn't pressed his claim too hard. He died in Frascati, Italy in 1807, and he is buried with his father and his brother, Bonnie Prince Charlie, in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City. There. 16th of July. 1557, Anne of Cleves dies. Okay, so we all know what happened to Henry VIII's wives, don't we? Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Yep. And we tend to remember that last one, Catherine Parr, because she survived. But the real survivor was actually wife number 4, Anne of Cleves. Henry had married her. It was a great strategic move. He's on a bit of a rebound after the death of Jane Seymour, his third wife, the mother of his heir, the future Edward VI. And it was a purely strategic move from Thomas Cromwell, his main minister, to have an alliance with another Protestant state so they could counterbalance France, the big Catholic state, big enemy of England. Cromwell helped this by he got the court painter Hans Holbein the Younger to go over to Germany and paint a rather flattering picture of the 25-year-old Anne of Cleves. So imagine Henry's dismay when she arrived in England for the marriage, and he suddenly realised that she wasn't quite as good looking as the picture had made out. We've all been there, haven't we, hey? And he wasn't very pleased, and within 7 months of their marriage, he'd actually divorced her. Strangely enough, based upon his form, both past and future, with wives, Henry and Anne were always on cordial terms. In fact, he referred to her as the king's beloved sister. And he gave her a load of estates, lots of estates in England, including Richmond Palace and Hever Castle in Kent, which had been the family home of the Boleyn family. And he actually said that Anne of Cleves was to have precedence over all other women in England, apart from the king's wife, whichever one that was at the time, and Princess Elizabeth and Princess Mary. Anne of Cleves actually outlived wife number 6, Catherine Parr, by 9 years, and she saw in the reigns not just of Edward VI, but also of Mary I, Mary Tudor as well, Bloody Mary. Although relations with Mary cooled when Anne was suspected of being involved in quite a famous plot to replace Mary with her half-sister, the Protestant Princess Elizabeth. It was called the Wyatt's Rebellion in 1554. Anyway, when Anne of Cleves died, Mary sort of rescinded and allowed her to be buried in Westminster Abbey. And her tomb is there to the day. Quite a small tomb, but it is in Westminster Abbey. 17th of June, 924. Back in Anglo-Saxon England times, Edward the Elder died. Edward the Elder was the son of Alfred the Great, and he was King of Wessex and later King of Mercia, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So he was never King of England, he was King of the Anglo-Saxons. He carried on Alfred's work of pushing the Danes back out of England, and he pushed them out of East Anglia, and he pushed them out of a large part of the East Midlands as well. He was aided in this fight by his sister, Lady Athelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, and I recently did a YouTube video about her called England's Forgotten Warrior Queen. Upon his sister's death, because she was ruling Mercia, Edward imposed direct Wessex rule on Mercia. He became King of Mercia. And so basically all of England south of the Humber, south of Yorkshire, was now united under one king. However, not everyone in Mercia was happy with the southern takeover, and Edward faced a rebellion in the Manchester and Cheshire areas, one of his sister's former strongholds, and they were supported by the Welsh from Gwynedd. Edward brought his army north and he defeated the rebels. He moved south of Chester to the River Dee at Farndon, and here he was having a bit of relax and recuperation when he died on the 17th of July 924. And finally this week, on the 18th of July 1290, King Edward I of England issues his Edict of Expulsion against England's Jewish community. The Jews had come to England with William the Conqueror in 1066, and they played a crucial role in the English economy. And here's why. The medieval church banned Christians from practicing usury, which is lending money for profit, otherwise known as interest. Now, this rule didn't apply to non-Christians, like the Jews. So this is a great way of the nobles and the merchants and the king getting around this rule from the church. So the wheels of the economy were oiled by these loans legally made by the Jews. But whilst they played a crucial role in the economic success of England, their personal success and wealth was resented. England and the Jewish community in England had been plagued by growing anti-Semitism for the previous 100 years. In fact, 100 years previously, when Richard I had gone on crusade, there'd been pogroms in England, and over 100 Jews, for instance, had been killed in York. Just after that, King Henry III had forced all Jews to be identified by wearing a badge. Interesting how history turns, isn't it? And that's one of the reasons that I think we actually should study history. Because if we don't study history, the mistakes of the past can be repeated all over again, and there is exactly one of them. He banished the Jews, he took most of their property for himself. He actually made any of the debts that were liable to the Jews liable to him as well, from all the noblemen and others. And by the end of 1290, the 2,000 to 3,000 strong Jewish community in England had gone, and Jews weren't allowed to return for 370 years, when, somewhat ironically, they were invited back by that open-minded, liberal Puritan Oliver Cromwell, the man who had no time for the Irish and carried out massacres against Roman Catholics in Ireland, welcomed the Jewish community back into Puritan Britain. History's amazing, isn't it? So there you go, a few history facts from British history this week. If you enjoyed that and you'd like to learn more about British history, you've got two options. First, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, or secondly, pop over to my website and sign up for even more free talks, many of which don't appear on YouTube. In the meantime, have a great week, and I'll see you very soon.